I was halfway through refactoring a security module when the email popped into my inbox. The subject line read, "Employment status update immediate." It took me 3 seconds to know my career at Novatrax Technologies was over. I clicked anyway, maybe out of habit, maybe out of denial. 4 sentences, sterile and final, erased 11 years of my life. Your services are no longer required, effective immediately. Return company property by end of business today. Thank you for your contributions. That was it. 11 years of late nights, missed weddings, weekends spent on call, the system architecture that powered half their Fortune 500 clients, all dismissed with a form letter that could have gone to anyone. My name is Daniel Cross. I'm 43 years old. For more than a decade, I was the backbone of Novatrax's cloud infrastructure. Every authentication flow, every synchronization layer, every database cluster that kept their platform running, it had my fingerprints on it. And yet, when they no longer needed me, they didn't even bother with a phone call. I didn't throw my chair across the room. I didn't storm into Conrad Mercer's office, the CEO, who'd built his reputation on my work. Instead, I just sat there letting the hum of keyboards and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights drown out the anger that was beginning to form in my chest. The worst part wasn't even the firing. It was the way they did it, by email, no meeting, no explanation. Just 4 cold sentences from an HR template probably pasted by someone who had no idea what those words meant to me. The screen blurred for a moment, not from tears but from exhaustion. I'd given this company everything I had, and they'd treated me like an error message to be dismissed. I should have stood up and shouted, demanded answers, forced them to look me in the eye. That's what Mercer would have expected, something he could spin as instability, something that justified cutting me loose. Instead, I closed the window, saved my work one last time, and began cleaning out my desk. A cardboard box from the supply closet, a small cactus I'd kept alive for 7 years, a mug that read, "World's Best Coder, a joke gift from a holiday exchange," a framed photo from our last team retreat in Lake Tahoe, all reduced to objects that could be carried out in 2 hands. Andrea Vega from accounting stopped by, her brow furrowing at the sight of the box. "Everything okay, Daniel?" "Just reorganizing," I said, forcing a smile. There was no point in dragging her into it. She hadn't made this decision. By 4:30, I was walking past the front desk with Thomas Rivera, the security guard, giving me a wave. We'd talked almost every morning about his son's baseball games, his wife's nursing program. He didn't know yet. Nobody did. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Cross," he called. I didn't have the heart to tell him tomorrow wouldn't come. The drive home was a blur. Highway 101 traffic classic rock on the radio cranked up too loud. My Honda Civic felt smaller than usual, weighed down by that cardboard box in the passenger seat. By the time I stepped into my apartment, the sky was already darkening. I dropped the box on the table and just stood there. 11 years, and this was all I had to show for it. A plant, a mug, a few photos, and an email that proved how disposable I really was. I opened a beer, ordered a pizza I didn't really want, and sat staring at my laptop. LinkedIn had already figured it out, its algorithm nudging me to update my employment status, cold efficiency reminding me I was nothing more than a data point. Before I go on, let me know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and a like so I know I'm not the only one who's been blindsided like this. I told myself I'd figure it out tomorrow, that tonight I'd just shut it all down, forget the humiliation, the emptiness. But the truth is, I couldn't. My cursor hovered over my old Novatrax files, the archive of 11 years of work contracts notes. Buried in there was something I hadn't thought about in years, something I didn't realize at that moment would change everything. Because that email wasn't the end of my story. It was the trigger for Novatrax's collapse. I didn't slam doors. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. What I did instead was almost worse. I left like I'd never mattered at all. I carried that cardboard box past rows of people who still thought they had jobs, past glowing screens filled with spreadsheets and dashboards, past conversations that stopped when I walked by. It was like I'd turned into a ghost in real time. Andrea Vega caught me in the hallway. She was sharp, reliable, someone who kept Novatrax's numbers honest when no one else wanted to look too closely. She tilted her head when she saw the box. "You're leaving." Her voice was low, almost careful. I gave her a smile I didn't feel. "Yeah, company decided they don't need me anymore." Her eyes flicked toward Conrad Mercer's corner office glass walls, shining in the afternoon light. "That's a mistake," she whispered, as if saying it too loudly might put her on the same list. I didn't answer. What could I say? That she was right? That Mercer was too busy polishing his merger pitch to Apexion Technologies to care about the people who built the system he was selling. Instead, I just shifted the box in my arms. Take care of yourself, Andrea. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, Tomas Rivera was at the security desk. He looked up from his crossword puzzle, the kind he did between ID checks, and gave me the same easy smile he'd had every morning for years. Big box today, he said. Cleaning house, I told him. He frowned. Don't tell me they... I nodded once. That was enough. His smile vanished, replaced by something heavier. Tomas wasn't management. He didn't have stock options or a reserved parking spot. But he knew people. He knew what loyalty looked like, and he knew it didn't deserve this kind of ending. Hell of a way to treat a man, he muttered. I wanted to stay to explain to unload the anger I'd been swallowing since that email, but Tomas had his own life, his own family depending on him, no reason to pull him into mine. So I just said, see you around, and walked out. The California air hit me like a slap, warm, unbothered, completely indifferent to the fact that my career had just been erased. The parking lot shimmered with late afternoon heat, and for a second, I just stood there staring at the Tesla Row, the company-subsidized symbols of Mercer's inner circle. My Honda Civic sat at the edge, practical, unremarkable, just like me in their eyes. I loaded the box into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. For the first time in years, I had nowhere I had to be. The silence was deafening. By the time I got home, I thought the numbness would have worn off. It didn't. The apartment looked exactly the same. Blinds half-open mail piled on the counter, the same faint hum from the fridge. But I wasn't the same. I set the box on the kitchen table and pulled out the small cactus. My sister had given it to me years ago as a joke. Even you can't kill this, she'd said. 11 years later, it was still alive, tougher than it looked. I poured a drink and sat in front of my laptop. LinkedIn kept flashing reminders to update my status as if being unemployed was just another bullet point to brag about. I scrolled through old emails instead, searching for something, anything that explained why Novatrax had chosen to throw me away now. That's when I saw his name again, Dr. Walter Briggs, my old mentor. I hadn't thought about him in years. Buried in my inbox was a subject line that stopped me cold patent documentation, urgent. I leaned back, the drink sweating in my hand. It was a reminder of something I had nearly forgotten, something I'd done years earlier because Dr. Briggs had pushed me to, something that was about to turn Novatrax's betrayal into their undoing. And they had no idea. I didn't sleep much that night. The glow of my laptop was the only light in my apartment, and I kept staring at one thing, the patent number. US 10784-332. My name, my work, not theirs. I thought back to Dr. Walter Briggs, the man who first pushed me to file it. He was retired now, living quietly in Sacramento. But in my mind, I could still hear his blunt lectures from our Ohio State days. Daniel, corporations will always claim ownership of what they didn't build. Paperwork is your only shield. At the time I thought he was paranoid. Now I knew he'd just been early. The problem wasn't whether the patent was valid, it was ironclad. The problem was what to do with it. Novatrax Technologies had been using my invention for 6 years, running billions of transactions through it every day, all without paying a dime. And now, they were dangling it in front of Apexion Technologies as the crown jewel of a $600 million merger. I needed someone who lived and breathed this world. That's how I found myself in the modest downtown office of Helena Brooks, a veteran patent attorney with 30 years of scars from Silicon Valley fights. Her bookshelf was lined with binders stamped with names like Oracle, Cisco, Intel. She didn't bother with small talk. Daniel, she said, scanning the patent file I'd kept buried for years. You realize you have them at the throat, right? Her words hit harder than I expected. For weeks I'd felt powerless, erased by a 4-sentence termination email. Now, hearing it framed that way, I felt something shift. Walk me through it, I told her. She adjusted her glasses. Every day they use your algorithm without a license, it's willful infringement. Courts don't take kindly to that, especially with evidence of profit. Damages could be 3 times their gains. But that's not even the most pressing part. This merger, she tapped a copy of Novatrax's SEC filing on her desk, cannot close unless Apexion verifies clean ownership of all intellectual property. The second their lawyers see your name on this patent, the deal freezes. I sat back, letting the reality sink in. For years, Mercer acted like Novatrax was untouchable, like the engineers were just interchangeable cogs. But all of it, every contract, every client to win, every boast about being the future of cloud infrastructure was balanced on something that legally belonged to me. Helena leaned forward. The only thing left to decide is whether you want to license it, sue them, or let them twist in the wind until Apexion pulls out. That's when I realized revenge didn't have to be loud. It didn't require shouting in Mercer's office or making a scene in front of HR. Revenge could be quiet, precise, written into the same compliance clauses he'd ignored. I didn't answer Helena right away. Instead, I looked down at the printed copy of the patent she'd slid across her desk. My name on the inventor line, my signature at the bottom. A piece of paper I'd once thought was nothing more than legal clutter. Mercer had his Tesla, his mansion in Los Altos, his weekend golf games with investors. But what he didn't have, what he couldn't buy, was ownership of the algorithm that kept his empire standing. The question wasn't whether I would use it. The question was how far I was willing to go. And what I didn't know then was how far Mercer would go once he realized I wasn't bluffing. By the time Friday rolled around, the calls started. Not from HR, not from IT, but from people whose job titles never used to include my name. Novatrax's head of legal left me a voicemail that sounded polished, rehearsed, and almost bored, like she was still pretending this was just a clerical issue. Mr. Cross, we'd like to clear up some concerns regarding intellectual property filings. Please return our call at your earliest convenience. 2 hours later, another voicemail landed. This one less polished, Conrad Mercer himself. "Daniel," he said, and even through the recording, I could hear the strain in his voice. "We need to talk about your patent. This is bigger than you. Let's be reasonable." Reasonable. That word stuck with me. Reasonable was the excuse executives used when they wanted you to fold quietly. When they wanted you to ignore the years of unpaid overtime, the family dinners you'd miss, the small cactus plant Andrea Vega had once given me that was still sitting on my desk when security marched me out. But now the balance had shifted. I didn't call Mercer back. Instead, I forwarded both voicemails to Helena Brooks. Within an hour, she emailed me a short message that read, "They're rattled. Let them come to you. Timing is leverage." That weekend, I visited my mentor, Dr. Walter Briggs. His Sacramento home was filled with dusty books, old servers stacked like relics, and the quiet hum of a man who'd seen this kind of fight before. "Paper beats politics, Daniel," he said, after I explained everything. "Mercer's entire empire is built on sand if the clause isn't his. He'll fight, he'll bluff. But the law's on your side. The question is whether you want a payout or whether you want him broken." I didn't answer immediately. The truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted the money. Another part wanted to see Mercer's Tesla repoed and his mansion sold off in a fire sale. But a deeper part, the part that kept me up at night, just wanted him to feel the same helplessness he'd written into that 4-line email. That night, I opened my old work laptop and scrolled through archived Slack messages, contract folders, and compliance notes I'd kept over the years. There it was, buried in a 2019 HR memo, the line that would become my favorite weapon. Clause 14.7. Intellectual property assignment. It covered trademarks, service marks, and trade secrets, but not patents. I stared at that clause for a long time. Mercer's legal team had been thorough, but not thorough enough. The omission wasn't just oversight, it was negligence. By Monday, news of the Novatrax Apexion merger was everywhere. TechCrunch, the journal CNBC. Analysts were calling it transformative, the deal that would redefine cloud infrastructure. I knew better. All of those glowing articles were built on a foundation that I alone controlled. Andrea Vega called me that evening. She'd been careful speaking in a low voice, like the phone might be tapped. "Daniel," word spreading inside. "They know something's wrong. Mercer's been in closed-door meetings for days. People are nervous." "Do they know it's me?" I asked. She hesitated. "Not yet, but it won't stay secret long." I thanked her, but my mind was already racing. Once my name surfaced, Mercer wouldn't be leaving voicemails. He'd be making threats. And when someone like him starts losing control, the mask comes off. That was fine by me, because I had no intention of backing down. And when Mercer finally came for me in person, I wanted him to see exactly how far out of his depth he really was. I'd been replaying the termination email in my head for days, the 4 sterile sentences that reduced 11 years of work into a footnote. It still sat flagged in my inbox, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I knew it was going to matter later. That email wasn't just cold, it was sloppy. It left a paper trail. By the 5th day, the fog had started to clear. I wasn't angry in the way most people expect. Rage burns out quickly. What I felt was colder, sharper. I'd spent too long inside Novatrax to miss what was happening. Conrad Mercer hadn't cut me loose for cost savings. He was clearing the decks for something bigger, and I didn't have to look far to confirm it. Andrea Vega called me late that evening. "Daniel, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. It feels wrong the way it happened." Her voice carried the weight of someone who wanted to do more, but knew the walls were closing in. Andrea had always been the numbers person who saw what the board was really chasing before anyone else. "Tell me what you can," I said carefully. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Mercer's pushing the merger with Apexion faster than anyone's comfortable with. Due diligence teams are already crawling through our books. He wants it done before next quarter's earnings call. Everyone's nervous, Daniel. Nobody's saying it out loud, but your firing it wasn't just about you. It was about cleaning up loose ends." Loose ends? That phrase hit me harder than I expected. 11 years, and I was a loose end to be tied off before the big deal. When I hung up, I opened the old folder on my external drive, the one I hadn't touched in years. And there it was, the patent file. My name on the application, the diagrams, the legal language that spelled out what I had created long before Mercer decided it belonged to Novatrax. It looked sterile on paper, but I knew what it really was. It was the clause that could cut the throat of a $600 million merger. I called Dr. Walter Briggs the next morning. He'd been more than a mentor. He'd been the one who told me that ownership wasn't just about who built the system, but who protected it. He picked up on the second ring, his voice still carrying that calm authority that had guided me when I was just starting out. "I had a feeling you'd be calling me," he said before I even explained. "Walter, it's worse than I thought. They're using my patented architecture at the core of their platform, and now they're trying to sell the company on top of it." He paused for a long moment, then said, "Then you already know what you have to do. Don't rush. Timing is everything. Let them walk into the trap themselves." His words steadied me. For the first time since the email, I felt a shift control was starting to tilt back in my direction. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the potent documents spread across my dining table, like pieces of a weapon I was just learning to assemble. Each line of legal jargon was another piece of armor I hadn't realized I still had. And in that quiet, I let myself laugh once. A short, dry laugh. Mercer thought I was out of the game. He had no idea that the one clause he overlooked could collapse everything he was chasing. Before I go further, have you ever seen someone so blinded by greed that they ignore the one person who could ruin it all? If you know that feeling, let me know you're still here by subscribing. I want to make sure I'm not the only one who's seen how careless power can get. By the end of the week, I'd reached out to Helena Brooks, the patent attorney Walter had connected me with years ago. She didn't need much explanation. The moment I mentioned Novatrax and Apexion in the same sentence, she understood the stakes. "Daniel, if they've been using your architecture without a license, and now they're trying to sell the company based on it, that's textbook infringement. The merger cannot legally close without your consent. You hold the choke point." Her words echoed what I already knew, but needed to hear out loud. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was leverage. Pure, unshakable leverage. I hung up knowing exactly what part 2 of my life was about to look like. Mercer had chosen email as the weapon to erase me. I'd chosen a single clause in U.S. patent law as the weapon to erase him. And the best part, he wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. The next move was mine, but I had no idea yet how desperate Mercer was about to become when he realized what I held in my hands. By the next week, the tone of the voicemails had changed. They weren't polished anymore. They weren't calm. They were urgent. First came a call from Novatrax's head of legal. Her voice cracked just enough to betray the pressure she was under. "Mr. Cross, we need to resolve this. If you could provide confirmation of assignment paperwork, we can arrange compensation. Please call back immediately." 2 hours later, Mercer's number flashed across my phone. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was raw, stripped of the smooth confidence he used to impress venture capitalists. "Daniel, you don't know what you're doing here. This isn't just about you. Apexion's board is watching. The SEC is watching. If this patent becomes a public issue, we all lose. Let's find a way to fix this quietly." Quietly. That word told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't just worried about the merger. He was worried about his own reputation, the image he'd cultivated for decades. I sent both recordings to Helena Brooks. She called me 5 minutes later, laughter in her voice. He's bluffing. If he had clean paperwork, he'd have already sent it. The fact that he's begging you for cooperation means he knows he's in violation. Still, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of unease. Mercer had more resources, more lawyers, more money than I'd ever see. What if they tried to bury me in filings until I drowned in legal fees? Helena seemed to hear the doubt in my silence. Daniel, don't overthink this. Patent law is clear. Without a signed assignment clause, ownership defaults to the inventor. You. We don't need to fight them. We just need to let Apexion's attorneys do the work for us. They'll kill the deal themselves once they see the risk. That night, I scrolled back through old Slack threads from my years at Novatrax. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe reassurance that I wasn't imagining things. There it was, in black and white, a 2019 compliance channel exchange where HR flagged a missing patent assignment clause during contract updates. The thread ended with a manager's dismissive note, low risk, close thread. Low risk. They'd ignored it. And now it was going to cost them hundreds of millions. I leaned back staring at my screen, the glow of those words painting my apartment walls. For years, Mercer had treated me like just another engineer he could discard. But the proof was right here. Slack archives, HR memos, the paper trail they thought would never see daylight. Andrea Vega texted me the next morning. Mercer's losing it. He was yelling in the boardroom. People are scared. Keep your head down, Daniel. Keep my head down? I almost laughed. For 11 years, I'd kept my head down waiting for hard work to matter. That's what got me erased by email. No, this time was different. This time I had the one thing Mercer couldn't buy or bully out of existence: ownership. But power shifts never happen cleanly. I knew Mercer wasn't going to stop at voicemails and quiet pleas. He'd come harder. And when he did, I had to be ready to meet him head on. The real fight hadn't even started yet. It was a Saturday morning when Mercer showed up. I looked out my apartment window, and there he was, leaning against his Tesla in the parking lot, like he was trying to hold together what was left of his empire. His suit was wrinkled, his tie-askew hair that used to be styled to perfection, now hanging limp. I'd never seen Conrad Mercer look small before. That morning, he did. I almost let him stand there, but curiosity won out. I wanted to see how far the mighty had fallen. When I stepped outside, he straightened, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Daniel, thank God, we need to resolve this. The words sounded like they hurt to say. For 11 years, he'd been the one with the power. The nod in meetings, the clipped good work that passed for recognition, the silent authority that hung over every decision. And now, here he was waiting for me, like a man begging for water in the desert. I crossed my arms. I got your messages. Mercer exhaled heavily. Good. Then you understand what's at stake. This merger, $500 million. Daniel, jobs, clients, shareholder value. We can't let one piece of paperwork derail all of that. Tell me what you want. Stock options. Cash. A consulting contract. I can put you on the board, if that's what it takes. The offers came rapid fire like bullets from a man who thought speed could make up for accuracy. I let him finish, then asked one question. Conrad, do you remember the email you had HR send me? He flinched, just slightly but enough. 4 sentences, I said. Not even the decency of a phone call after 11 years. That email is still flagged in my inbox. Do you know why? He said nothing. Because it's proof. Proof of how disposable you thought I was. Proof that this isn't about jobs or clients or shareholder value. It's about control. And you don't have it anymore. His voice sharpened. Daniel, be reasonable. You can't possibly want to blow up a deal this size out of spite. Reasonable. I almost laughed. I gave you 11 years of reasonable. Nights, weekends, family I barely saw. Reasonable got me fired by email. This isn't spite. This is ownership. The law says the patent is mine. And until you acknowledge that there's nothing to discuss. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You realize what happens if this deal dies, don't you? You'll be known as the man who tanked a $600 million merger. Companies will blacklist you. Investors will bury you. You think you're in control, but you're playing with fire. For the first time, I felt the old doubt creep in. What if he was right? What if burning Novatrax meant burning myself too? Then I remembered the Slack thread, the compliance warning they had ignored labeled low risk. I remembered Helena's calm certainty that Apexion's lawyers would kill the deal the second they saw my name on the patent. And I remembered Walter Briggs telling me years ago that paper beats politics. I steadied my voice. I'm not playing Conrad. You gambled that nobody would notice the missing clause. You lost. And now you want me to cover it up. That's not going to happen. He stood there breathing hard, eyes narrowing. For a moment, I thought he might actually lose control, that the mask would fall completely. But then he stepped back, trying to gather whatever dignity he had left. "This isn't over," he said finally. "No," I told him, "it isn't." He climbed back into his Tesla and pulled away the hum of the electric engine fading down the street. I stood there for a long moment, watching the empty space where he'd been. Inside, I poured myself a coffee, sat down at my table, and spread the patent documents in front of me again. The termination email sat open on my laptop screen beside them. Two symbolic anchors of my entire career. One meant to erase me, the other proof I couldn't be erased. And for the first time, I realized Mercer wasn't my real opponent anymore. Apexion was. Their attorneys, their board, their billions in resources, they were the ones who would decide whether this ended quietly or in fire. The question wasn't whether Mercer would fight. It was how far Apexion was willing to go to protect him. The first email came on a Wednesday morning. Subject line: intellectual property clarification, urgent. Sender: Patricia Wong, General Counsel, Apexion Technologies. I must have read her name 3 times before opening it. I knew of her anyone in Silicon Valley who paid attention to litigation did. Wong wasn't just a lawyer. She was the one corporations hired when they wanted the problem not just solved, but buried. Her tone was polite, even professional, but the subtext was clear. We know who you are. We know what you have. And we need to talk. I forwarded the email to Helena Brooks, then called her. She moved fast, Helena said, after scanning the message. That means the IP audit flagged your patent, and now Apexion's entire deal team is panicking. They can't close until this is resolved, and right now, you're the bottleneck. Her voice carried a note of satisfaction, but I wasn't celebrating yet. What's their play here? They'll try to charm you first. Polite emails, reasonable offers. Then, if you don't play ball, they'll escalate. Threats of litigation, blacklisting, dragging your name through the mud. Patricia Wong didn't get her reputation by being nice. I stared at my laptop, the patent file open next to the email. 2 documents side by side, the one they wanted erased, and the one they wished I'd never signed. That evening, Andrea Vega called again. She sounded exhausted. "Daniel, it's chaos here. People whispering in hallways, Mercer snapping at everyone. HR just sent out a vague policy reminder about non-disclosure obligations. Feels like they're trying to scare anyone from talking to you." A small, bitter smile crossed my face. They should be more worried about the paperwork they never got me to sign. Andrea hesitated. "Be careful, Daniel. You don't know how far they'll go." I knew she was right. Mercer was desperate enough to stand in my parking lot. Apexion was desperate enough to have their general counsel reach out personally. Both sides needed me silent, and both were learning I wasn't going to be. The next day, I met Helena at her office in San Jose. She had already printed Wong's email, marked up with notes in red ink. "She's asking for a call," Helena said. "My advice, don't do it alone. I'll sit in." When the call connected, Wong's voice was smooth, professional, with just enough warmth to make you forget she was a shark. "Mr. Cross, thank you for taking the time. We respect your contributions to the field, truly, but you must understand this merger represents extraordinary value for thousands of stakeholders. A dispute over paperwork shouldn't derail progress for so many." I let her talk. Years of writing code had taught me patience. Let the process run. Don't interrupt the compiler. Finally, she paused. "What are you hoping to achieve here?" I glanced at Helena, who gave me the slightest nod. "I'm not hoping to achieve anything," I said evenly. "I already have ownership. U.S. patent number 10784-332. It's filed active and uncontested. Novatrax has used it without a license for 6 years. If Apexion wants clean IP in this merger, you'll need my consent. Otherwise, you're buying a lawsuit." The silence on the line was heavy. Then Wong spoke again, her tone sharper now. "Do you understand the consequences of your position? You'll be painted as obstructive. The industry will see you as a liability. Future employers will hesitate." Helena cut in. "With respect, Ms. Wong, the law is on his side. If Apexion proceeds without addressing this, your board will be exposed to litigation. Daniel isn't obstructing. He's protecting what's legally his." There was another pause, longer this time. Finally, Wong said, "I'll relay this to the board. The call ended, leaving me staring at my reflection in the black screen. For years, I'd been the man behind the curtain, the quiet engineer keeping the machine alive while others collected bonuses. Now, I was sitting across from Apexion's top lawyer, dictating terms. The shift was dizzying, almost surreal. I remembered Tomas Rivera at the security desk, looking at me with that quiet sympathy the day I left. Hell of a way to treat a man, he'd said. He had no idea how right he was. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about punishing Mercer anymore. It was about forcing an entire system to acknowledge the one person they had erased. The question was no longer whether I had leverage. It was what I was willing to demand in exchange for it. The first letter arrived by courier, thick with legal stationery and embossed with Apexion's logo. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. Still, I slit the envelope and read the first paragraph out loud, my voice flat in my empty apartment. Mr. Cross, Apexion Technologies, is prepared to pursue all legal remedies in the event of continued obstruction to the pending Novatrax Apexion merger. Your assertion of ownership over U.S. Patent 1784332 is contested and unsupported by the terms of your former employment. Failure to comply may result in litigation and personal liability. The words were designed to intimidate. They didn't scare me. They made me angry. I forwarded the letter to Helena Brooks, then called her. She picked up on the second ring. "They finally sent one," she asked. "Courier, heavy paper, threatening tone." I heard her flip through her notes. "Good, that's exactly what we wanted. Empty threats mean they don't have a case. If Novatrax had an assignment clause, they'd have filed it already. The fact that they're leaning on Apexion's attorneys tells me Mercer is out of moves, and now Wong is trying to muscle you." I sat at my kitchen table, the termination email still flagged on my laptop beside the patent file. 2 artifacts of my career, one meant to erase me, the other impossible to erase. "They're hoping I blink," exactly, Helena said. "Don't." That night, Andrea Vega called again, whispering like she was in a hallway. "Daniel Mercer's unraveling. He's telling people you're blackmailing the company. HR sent around another reminder about confidentiality agreements. People are scared to even say your name." I almost laughed. He should have been more scared of Clause 14.7. Andrea went quiet, then said, "Be careful, Daniel. You're winning, but they won't take this lying down." The next morning, another letter arrived, this one softer. Novatrax is prepared to offer a financial settlement in exchange for full assignment of patent rights. The amount is negotiable. Confidentiality agreement required. I pushed the paper away. They wanted me to sell my silence. They wanted me to take a check sign, an NDA, and vanish like the termination email intended. But I hadn't come this far just to disappear. I called Helena again. "They're offering money." "Of course they are. Standard playbook. First the stick, then the carrot." She paused. "What do you want to do?" I stared at the patent file, its diagrams and claims laid out in sterile legalese. For years, I'd treated it like clutter. Now, it was the only thing keeping Novatrax alive. "I don't want quiet," I said finally. "I want the truth on the record. I want Mercer forced to admit what he did." There was silence on the line, then Helena's voice softened. "Then we won't settle. We'll demand licensing fees public documented, undeniable. That way anyone who looks will see your name tied to the technology, no erasure." For the first time, I felt something like relief. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about proof, about being seen. Later that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Just one line, stop before you regret this." I stared at it, my jaw tightening. Mercer was too proud to send that himself. This was Apexion now playing a dirtier hand. I screenshotted the message and sent it to Helena. Her reply was immediate good. "Harassment adds leverage. Keep everything." I leaned back in my chair, looking at the glow of the termination email on my screen and the stack of threats and offers beside it. Cold betrayal in one hand, compliance clause in the other, 2 weapons. Both mine now. For 11 years, I'd been silent while Mercer took the credit. Now they wanted me silent again, only this time I had the choice. And I'd already made it. Because this fight was no longer about saving face or securing money. It was about rewriting the story Mercer tried to erase. And the next move would make sure the entire board of Novatrax heard it, word for word. The invitation came in the form of a subpoena threat. Not subtle, not polite, just Apexion's lawyers telling Novatrax that unless the patent dispute was clarified at the board level, they would walk from the deal. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across a long oak table in Novatrax's 12th floor conference room. It felt strange being back. The same glass walls, the same abstract artwork, the same faint hum of servers in the distance. But this time, I wasn't the silent engineer presenting quarterly updates. I was the problem Mercer couldn't erase. Conrad Mercer sat at the head of the table, dark circles under his eyes, his tie pulled too tight. He avoided looking at me. Helena Brooks sat to my right, a slim binder of documents in front of her. On the far end, Apexion's representatives shuffled their papers. And then there was Cliff Morton, the board liaison, his voice carrying the weight of shareholders who had just seen millions evaporate. Mr. Cross Morton said carefully, "We appreciate you coming. We need clarity. The merger cannot proceed with unresolved IP ownership. Can you confirm the status of U.S. Patent 10784-332? I opened the folder in front of me, sliding a certified copy across the table, filed under my name, approved in 2019. No assignment clause in my contract, no transfer of rights. It belongs to me. Mercer finally spoke, his voice tight. "Daniel, you know this was developed while you were employed here. Company resources, company projects." Helena cut in before I had to. "Employment doesn't override patent law. Without a signed assignment clause, ownership defaults to the inventor. We've reviewed Mr. Cross's contract. It's silent on patents. The law is clear." The room went quiet. I reached into my bag and pulled out a printed Slack exchange from 2019. I slid it across to Morton. This was flagged by HR during a compliance review. "You can see the line here, missing patent assignment clause, low risk closed thread. You knew, and you ignored it." Mercer shifted in his seat. That was a clerical oversight. I leaned forward. An oversight worth 6 years of unlicensed use, billions in transactions, and now a merger on the line. That's not clerical. That's negligence. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence was heavier than anything Mercer could have shouted. Andrea Vega caught my eye from the far corner. She wasn't on the board, but she'd been pulled in to provide financial data. Her expression was unreadable, but the smallest nod told me she remembered all the late nights, all the hours we poured into systems Mercer took credit for. Morton cleared his throat. "Mr. Cross, what are you seeking?" I let the question hang for a moment, feeling the weight of the termination email still flagged in my inbox, the one that tried to erase me. I thought of Tomas Rivera telling me hell of a way to treat a man as I walked out with a cardboard box. "I'm not here to sell silence," I said finally. "I'm here to license my work. Fair market rates, standard terms, non-exclusive. My name stays on the record. Every contract acknowledges the patent belongs to me." One of Apexion's attorneys scribbled notes furiously. Mercer looked like he might snap. "You'll destroy the merger," he hissed. I met his eyes for the first time all morning. No Conrad. "You already did when you fired me by email. I'm just the reminder that paper beats politics." It landed. The room absorbed the line. Morton sat back, exhaling slowly. "Then it's settled. Novatrax will need to negotiate licensing if this deal is to move forward." Helena leaned close and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "That's checkmate." The meeting adjourned, but I lingered a moment looking around the room I'd once spent 11 years serving. The whiteboard still bore traces of diagrams I'd drawn months earlier, half erased by someone who probably didn't know what they meant. It hit me. Then this wasn't just about stopping Mercer. It was about making sure the system that tried to erase me could never do it again. As I gathered my papers, I saw Mercer slump back in his chair, his shoulders sagging under the weight of defeat. For years, he'd spoken about vision, synergy, shareholder value. Now, he couldn't even meet my eyes. And yet I knew this wasn't finished, because while Novatrax had just bowed to the reality of my ownership, Apexion's board hadn't said their last word. The real decision wasn't in this room, it was in theirs. The news didn't come from Mercer. It never does. Men like him don't deliver their own execution orders. It came in the form of a press release, glossy with corporate language, but unmistakable in its meaning. Apexion Technologies has terminated merger discussions with Novatrax following unresolved intellectual property discrepancies. While we remain committed to innovation, the board has determined the proposed transaction no longer meets strategic conditions. I read it twice then, a third time, the words sinking in with a quiet finality. The $600 million deal was dead. An hour later, Andrea Vega called. I could hear the buzz of the office behind her nervous, laughter-hushed conversations. "It's over, Daniel. Apexion pulled the plug. Mercer's locked in his office. Word is the board's meeting without him this afternoon." I pictured the 12th floor, the long oak table where I'd just sat, only now with Mercer on the other side, stripped of leverage, trying to explain to his shareholders why the Crown Jewel merger collapsed over one missing clause. "Thank you, Andrea," I said. "Take care of yourself." That afternoon, Helena forwarded me a copy of the board's official notice. Mercer had been transitioned out effective immediately. The statement was polite surgical. "We thank Mr. Mercer for his service and leadership, and wish him well in his future endeavors." Translation: he was finished. I sat back in my chair, staring at the two artifacts I'd kept visible through this entire fight. On my laptop screen, the termination email, 4 sentences that tried to erase 11 years of my life. On my desk, the certified patent copy, my name printed in bold type. Cold betrayal and undeniable proof side by side. Tomas Rivera texted me later that night. Just 5 words, hell of a way to end. I laughed not because it was funny, but because he was right. This wasn't the ending Mercer expected, and it wasn't the one I once thought I wanted either. For weeks I thought revenge meant destroying Mercer, watching him lose his merger, his job, his reputation that was satisfying. Yes. But staring at the patent file now, I realized it went deeper. What I wanted was acknowledgement. To have my work tied to my name, not buried in a contract folder, or reduced to a bullet point in someone else's investor pitch. I wanted proof that the man they tried to erase was still here. And I had it. The next morning, the Wall Street Journal headline made it official: Novatrack's CEO ousted after merger collapse tied to patent dispute. Beneath it, my name not as a footnote, but as the inventor whose claim had stopped the deal. For 11 years I'd been invisible. Now the industry couldn't stop saying my name. Helena called, her voice softer than usual. "Daniel, they'll come with offers now. Licensing fees, settlements, maybe consulting roles. You're holding a key piece of infrastructure. Don't undersell yourself." And I smiled. I'm not selling myself at all, just the license. There was a pause. That's exactly the point. Later that week, I got an email from Dr. Walter Briggs. He didn't write much, just one line that carried more weight than any board statement paper beats politics. "Proud of you?" I sat with that for a long time. Because beneath the layers of legal threats, boardroom showdowns, and billion-dollar collapses, that was the lesson. Mercer had played politics. I had played paper. And in the end, paper won. But I knew one thing: even then, this wasn't the final page. Because while Mercer was gone and the merger was dead, Novatrack still needed my technology to survive. And licensing it meant more than money. It meant control. For the first time in years, I wasn't working for them. They'd be working for me. The offers came faster than I expected. Amazon, IBM, even a smaller outfit out of Austin that wanted an exclusive. The numbers were surreal: upfront payments, royalty percentages, equity stakes. For a man who'd been fired by email, it was almost laughable how quickly the same industry that erased me now wanted to court me. I didn't take the first check that crossed my desk, or the second. I let Helena sort through the noise, her steady voice reminding me that leverage was only useful if you didn't sell it too cheap. Novatrax eventually came crawling. Not Mercer. He was gone, stripped of his title, his parking space, his carefully staged vision statements. No, this time it was Morton, the board liaison, his tone clipped but respectful. "We're prepared to license your technology at fair market rates," he said over the phone. It wasn't an apology. Men like that don't apologize. But it was acknowledgement, and in my world, acknowledgement mattered more than contrition. The contract was clean. $68 million up front, royalties locked in for the next decade. My name stamped across every licensing agreement. It wasn't just money, it was permanence. When the ink dried, I sat in my apartment staring again at the 2 artifacts that had followed me through this war. The termination email still flagged in my inbox. The patent certificate laminated, now framed on the wall above my desk. One had tried to erase me, the other had made sure I couldn't be erased. I didn't keep the email out of bitterness anymore. I kept it as a reminder of what corporate power can do if you let it, and of how one overlooked clause can flip the script. Tomas Rivera stopped by one evening, still in his security uniform. He looked at the framed patent, then at me. "Hell of a way to come out on top," he said with a smile. I poured us both coffee. "Paper beats politics, Tomas." He chuckled. That line's going to stick. He was right. It already had. Andrea Vega left Novatrax a month later. She called to thank me before she moved on to a role at a firm that still believed in merit. "You gave the rest of us proof that they're not untouchable," she told me. That meant more than the money ever could. Helena and I started meeting weekly, sketching out an advisory practice. We'd seen how easily engineers, inventors, and designers got steamrolled by corporations that treated their ideas like disposable property. We called it Briggs and Cross after the mentor who first told me to file that patent. Walter sent us a simple reply. Glad my advice finally paid off. It did in ways neither of us could have imagined. Some nights I still think about Mercer, about the glass office, the Tesla, the smug confidence he wore like a tailored suit. He played politics until the end. And in the end, politics lost. But I don't think about him with anger anymore. I think about him as a lesson, because what I wanted was never just his downfall. What I wanted was what I'd been denied for 11 years, my name tied permanently to my work. The proof that I existed in the very system that tried to erase me. That was the real revenge. Not the collapse of a merger, not the ouster of a CEO, but the permanence of recognition. Today, every contract Novatrack signs with a client, every renewal, every audit carries my name in the fine print. Every time Apexion's lawyers skim a filing, they see it. They can't ignore me anymore. And when young programmers ask me what I learned, I tell them the same thing Walter Briggs told me years ago. Always file the paperwork, because corporations forget. But paper doesn't. I don't raise my voice when I say it. I don't need to. Because now my name speaks for itself.